How's it going, everybody? So this is my first stream ever. This is the first time I'm gonna be basically showing you guys what I'm doing for the future. I plan to be like trying to do some online poker in my spare time. In my everyday life, I work at Home Depot, and I pretty much, well, I do that for the summer, and then I'm basically trying to finish my bachelor's. Well, just finished my bachelor's degree, and I'm going for my master's in the fall. So that's basically what I'm working on right now. Just basically trying to get everything done. Now, I kind of basically wanted to show you guys that I'm starting to like learn to play horse right now. This is the first horse tournament I've ever played in my life. I'm about to hop into another no limit tournament. I usually play no limit, so that's normally what you're gonna see me playing. Right now, I started playing this this horse tournament because I was just like, I don't know, I really want to play some horse. I haven't played horse. Plus, I might hop into this limit Raz tournament as well, just to play some different games. Sick of playing no limit all the time. But anyway, I am going to probably hop into a no limit game at some point. Let's see. Holy shit. Okay. Anyway, I was just listening to Grano explain how to play.
You've got a 1 essentially. So most power are going to contain an ace. There's a few hands we'll get to a little bit later that don't contain an ace that you can play, but you shouldn't be too excited about. Now, the next group of hands we're going to look at are powerful low hands. Obviously, this goes without question. You're looking at hands, again, that contain an ace. 4 babies, maybe all wheel cards, really, really nice. You can make a case occasionally for playing a 4-card low hand without an ace, something like deuce 3 4 5, deuce 3 4 6. But again, you should proceed cautiously with these hands because you're going to be an underdog to anybody that has an ace. Likely for low, if they have ace deuce, ace 3, that's better than your deuce 3 4 5. And on top of that, they have an ace, which means ace high beats 5 high. Now, there are some high hands that you can play. Some of these include like king, queen, jack 10, king, queen, jack. 4 cards that are connected. Now, these hands are not that great because on a lot of flops, you just have to fold. If you have king, queen, jack, it comes 7 3 deuce. Yeah, you have an overpair. Big deal. The other guy probably has a low, and he's free rolling you all the way, so you have to fold on these flops. When you play these high hand type hands, you really have to flop at least 2 parts high, right? Occasionally, obviously, you flop top set. You've got king, jack 10, and it comes king 8 4.
Cookies.
Well, you've got the nuts right now.
Ooh.
Having said that,
see, like
mean you get too crazy,
hands like this, I don't know. I just don't know. Are they good? Are they bad?
You've got top set.
I don't know.
By the turn card, you could be the one in really bad shape. If the turn is a low card, or if the turn is a flush card, you're the one that needs to catch up.
Because he said you can only use 2
like that,
of the cards in your hand and 3 cards from the board
right?
to make it.
It has to be like a 9, 10, jack, queen, and non-heart, and both the turn and river have to be that. So don't get too crazy just because you flop top set. These high hands can put some pressure on low draws, not as much as you could in a game that offers pot limit or no limit betting. So again, they go down in value. They go up in value actually if you're playing pot limit because you can, as I said, put more pressure on. But I would proceed cautiously unless you flop 2 parts high, 1 part low with these high connected hands, and make sure that these are connected. You don't want to be playing like 8 jack queen king. That's just trash. Speaking of trash, we're going to talk about trash high hands, right? A lot of these big pair hands are not so good. You get jack 9 6, or you get king 10 4. Sure, you got a high pair, but as we mentioned before, you flop a set in this game. That's not all it's cracked up to be because straights and flushes get there. In a game like this, if a flush draw gets there, it's probably somebody's going to have a flush if they've played all the way to the river. So these hands, there's very few situations where you can feel comfortable and play them aggressively. And with a hand like king 10 4, you don't hit a lot of flops, right? Now a hand like king jack 10, king queen jack, that's a much more playable hand because again, you can flop top set with a straight. You can flop top set with a straight draw. A lot of other good things can happen with that. So avoid these kind of trashy, high pair junk hands. Just because you have king 10 4 doesn't mean you have a hand. So obviously in a game that's titled you essentially want to start with a low first, right? You want these two-way hands where you make your low and then you back into a high kind of thing, where you're like, I got nut low, I got top pair, let's try to get there. I got nut low with a flush draw, let's try to make the flush. That's typically where you want to come from, right? So a trashy version of these low hands are the middling ones, right? The ones that don't have an ace, something like a 3, 4, 6, 7. The 5, 6, 7, 8 type hands. They look good, especially in Omaha High, because when you hit them, you can usually scoop the pot. However, in this game, if you play 6, 7, 8, 9, for example, a real trash middle hand, how are you going to scoop this pot? Anytime if it comes 4, 5, 6 or 7, 8, 9 or 6, somebody's going to make a low, or if not, somebody's going to make a better high. So these middle cards are the ones you want to avoid. You can play some high hands. You can play some. You should be playing some low hands, and you play some two-way hands. But the middle garbage hands are just that, garbage. Now, there's one specific hand combo I want to talk about, and that's Ace King specifically. So we all know limit hold'em and no limit hold'em. Ace King's a pretty powerful hand, all right? It's not quite as powerful in Omaha High Low because you don't really.
All right, now I gotta switch to Raz because I'm playing Raz now, and I don't know what the hell this game is. This game is. I thought it was something different, completely different than what it is. Obviously.
Welcome everybody. Hope you enjoy this series. I've been having a lot of fun doing it. Mixed games make my heart warm and fuzzy. Now, this next game we're going to talk about for a lot of people drives people crazy. I remember a guy actually had a tattoo that said Ace 2 3 4, and then it had banana, 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 like 3 bananas. Because in Raz, we call a banana a big card, and that's a bad thing. So he had a tattoo because he's like, I'm so unlucky. Look at me. I start with Ace 2 3 4 every time. Comes banana, banana, banana. Hey, if you only had my luck. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. You also suck, but that's besides the point. Anyway, enough of that guy. The New Yorker or whatever he was. I don't know. I can't remember. Big biceps, though, he had. Ace 2 3 4, banana, banana, banana. I thought that was funny. All right, let's talk about the rules in Raz, okay? So Raz is, the hand rankings are different than poker, okay? So it's not about, flushes and straights and royal flush. Throw that all out. All that charts you've learned, not relevant to Raz, okay? All that matters in Raz is numbers. So an ace is a 1, essentially, right? A jack is like an 11, queen is like a 12, king is like a 13, okay? We want low numbers. We want the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the best hand you can get in Raz. 1, 2, Ace 2, 3, 4, 5, essentially, right? Now it plays just like 7-card stud. If you want to if you want to understand how the rules work in 7-card stud, you can check out that video. But the only difference here is the bring-in. The player who brings it in will be the highest card by suit. Okay, the reason for that is the highest card by suit usually isn't going to play, so it adds a little bit of dead money into the hand. Whereas in regular stud, the opposite is true, where like the deuce brings it in because it's unlikely that deuce is going to play. So now, as I said, Ace 2, 3, 4, 5 is the best hand. Pairs are not good, so you can't have like Ace, Ace, Deuce, Deuce, 3 and have a 3, right? Pairs are discarded. So you want to have 5 different cards. The lowest 5 different cards in the pot wins the pot.
This game is just fucking retarded, dude. Like that. What is
some guy
going
has Ace 2, 3, 5, 7, and the other one has Ace 2, 3, 4, 6.
Sorry,
which one
I did
wins?
not mean to use
this guy,
that.
Right? He's got 5 cards, 6 or lower, right? So it doesn't work like who's got the most low cards. It's all about the highest of the low 5. Okay, so let's look at another goofy example like that. Let's say, for example, I have Ace 2, 3, 4, 10. Right?
It's definitely
Ace 2, 3, 4, 10. The other guy has
long learning process.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, my cards are lower than his, except his highest card, the 9, is
so
lower
supposedly
than 10.
my pair of aces are discarded now.
The 9 would
I don't know.
Now, in cases where both of you have the same card, it goes to the next lowest card. So let's say one player has Ace 2, 3, 4, 9, and the other player has Ace 2, 3, 5, 9. Well, you get rid of the 9s, and you have the 5 and the 4. The 4 wins. Okay, so it's 5 lowest cards. Pretty straightforward.
I love it.
Okay, so it should be pretty self-explanatory that, the cards you want in this game are low, right? So Ace 2, 3 would be the best starting hand. However, you definitely want to be very cognizant of what's on the board, okay? So when you see cards out that you already have, that's really good for you, okay? So for example, let's say you did start with 4, 5, 6, and there's 2 5s and a 4 out. That's good for you, especially if those 2 players don't play and a guy with a deuce does. Because the player with the deuce, those are, you don't want to see cards you need, okay? You want to see cards that you have. So, for example, if I had Ace, Deuce, 3, and I see 4, 4, 5, 5, 5 out, I'm like, damn it. I still have a great hand, but my hand's gotten a little bit more dead because a lot of the cards that I actually need, the 4s and the 5s, are gone, So you want to be cognizant of board. You always want to pay attention to that. The main reason you really want to be paying attention to the board is a lot of times people sleep and they don't even notice. They're like, oh, that was your free money you didn't take. Because position changes every hand, you don't know, okay, I'm on the button, I'm next to the button. The button essentially, you know, is represented by whoever's the bring-in, right? So if the guy on your left has the king, he brings it in, everyone folds to you, and then, you know, you have a 3-up and you just have like king, queen in the hole and you're like, oh, I have garbage, I fold. That's your money. It's like 100% a steal. So Raz is really a game about stealing and re-stealing. So say, for example, you have a 6-up, okay? And behind you, the players behind you, there's a queen, a 9, and a 10, okay? You have a 6-up, but you have king, queen in the hole, which is garbage. Like, you have a really bad hand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You have to represent a lot in this game. So because you have the lowest card, these guys all have an up card. You know they don't have a 3-card strong hand. So you just raise every time. And we talked about this in the stud video. The price you're getting laid is over 2 to 1 on these steals. So they're super important. Stealing and re-stealing is really what Raz is all about. Obviously, you know, the kind of hands you want to play, typically, like, you could sort of, the strength of a hand is so determined upon the board, right? You could have 9-6 deuce. Is that a strong hand?
Every time I showing cards like a 9
Not really.
or higher.
No. But it is if you're looking at boards that are 9, 10, queen, queen, king. Now you have an amazing hand. So it's all relative, right? So it's very difficult to define hand strength in Raz because it's so board dependent. As a general rule, obviously, anytime you have 3 wheel cards, wheel meaning any cards between ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, that's really, really good, right?
I'm playing this one.
But you want to be cognizant of the board. Sometimes you have an 8-up and 3, 4 in the hole, and you're up against, you know, a guy with a 9, and another one with a jack, and you're like, you're in primo position, right? There's no way that they can have a better 3-card hand than you in these kind of situations. So in those kind of spots, you generally want to, you know, be pretty aggressive with it. However, that's not so true when you get down to like the bottom end range. So if you have, let's say, for example, a 5-up, and the guy has a 6-up, you may have a better hand than him, but if he's going crazy, it's probably marginally so. And the one thing that I would avoid doing in Raz is overplaying hands in situations where you're like just going crazy, especially in a tournament. In a Raz tournament, if you are playing one, just because you have 3 good low cards, your opponent who's re-raising you probably has 3 good low cards, and you don't really have, you know, 4th Street changes everything. Like, if on 4th Street you catch a king and he catches a low one, your like minuscule edge has gone from minuscule edge to like, oops, I'm screwed. The problem is you've made the pot so big, you can't even fold now, right? You basically have to go all the way to the river for the most part. So sure, when you have ace deuce 3, ace deuce 4, all these kind of great hands, you definitely want to like, you know, it's not wrong to 3-bet. You should be 3-betting the majority of the time if somebody raises, especially because they may be stealing with some sort of like king in the hole or something like that. Because a lot of the time what you'll see is, let's say for example, there's a king queen behind, right? And I'm sitting here with the 3. And there's another guy here, David Oppenheim, very good Raz player. He's got a 4. He's going to raise with his 4, even though I got a 3, hoping that I got a king queen or something in the hole and I'm just going to fold, right? So now he's going to steal it. Doesn't mean he's got a good hand. He might have a 10 in the hole or a jack and just figure, hey, you know, plenty, I'll fight him. Because this game, I mean, it's kind of an interesting dance because it's so much about representing and you have to represent, right? So, for example, let's say you started the hand with deuce 4, 5. Okay? And your 4 is up, so he can see your 4. And your deuce 5 is hidden in the hole. He has a 3. Okay? Now he catches a 10, and you catch a deuce. Okay? So it looks like you got a really big low, but you don't, because you paired the deuce. He doesn't know that. Okay? He doesn't know you paired, unless he's Phil Ivey or John Hennigan or Huckseed or Ted Forrest, who just have X-ray vision and they can just feel it. They just feel when you pair. It's like kind of a part of the skill, the human element of like being able to sense when someone paired based on how they looked at their cards. We won't get into that because it's like some super secret stuff. You got to pay for that. That's $19.95 per second of every, you know, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, because my board looks good, right? My board is 4 deuce. His board is 3-10. I'm in the lead. And oh, by the way, with Raz, the lead is always whoever has the lower looking board. So if my board is 3-7, his board is 3-9, I go first. Okay, until that switches. Now, if we both pair or something like that, like, whoever has the lower pair, they would be low. So they would go first. It's reversed from how you would have it instead. Okay, so Raz is just like reversed a lot of stuff. Now, because the low always goes first, this isn't a game where you see a lot of raising past 4th Street. Now, there are certain situations where, you know, it'll make sense to raise, and we'll cover a couple of those because why not? You know, we got time. So imagine your opponent is showing 3-7-8. and you're showing deuce 4 jack. Well, he's low, right? So he could have an 8 low, which is a very, very powerful hand. He may have paired, he may be bluffing, he may have a lot of things. Let's say you have ace 3 in the hole. So your hand is ace 2, 3, 4 jack. His hand is 8, 7, 3. Well, if he has 2 low cards, he's got you in, relatively bad shape. He's got, an 8 and you got to draw to beat it. If he bets, though, in this situation against his entire range, this is a really good spot to raise a lot of time. Because if he doesn't have the 8, you're way in front with ace, deuce, 3, 4, jack. So let's take a look at these 2 hands, right? One hand you see is ace, deuce, 3, 7, queen. The other is ace, deuce, 7, jack, 10, okay? So the ace, deuce, 7, jack, 10, well, that's the better low hand as of now, right? Because jack low beats queen low. So if the hand ended right now, the jack wins. But if you look at the percentages, notice almost 75% favorite is the queen. And that's because of what they're drawing to. The jack has a really bad draw. So it's going to go from a jack and not improve that much. It's going to go to a 10. However, the queen, if the queen improves, the queen could shut the hand out. If the queen catches a 7 made or anything like that, he can end the hand on 6th Street and have the guy drawing completely dead. So one of the things you want to factor in when you're looking at Raz is not only the player's highest card that they can make their hand with, but the next card behind it. And if you have a really good draw that undercuts both of them, then a lot of times you can raise. So for example, a guy's got 10, 9, 6 showing, and you have 7, 5.
We're switching limits again. We're switching games again. Now we're playing stud.
Hello, poker fans and wannabe World Series of Poker bracelet winners. I thought it might be fun to start a new series to kind of teach you guys a little bit more about the other games, because there's more to poker than just playing No Limit Hold'em. Sure, No Limit Hold'em is what you see on TV. It's the most popular.
Yeah, we get it. Oh, shit.
Hearts, spades. So it's alphabetical. Your position changes from hand to hand depending on where the bring-in is. And we'll get to that after we sort of discuss the basic principles of how does 7-card stud even work. So in the game of 7-card stud, each player is dealt 2 down cards just like they would be in Hold'em. Now the only difference here is every player gets a 3rd card that's face up, okay? The lowest card by suit, and to memorize this, it's really easy. It's clubs, diamonds, hearts, spades. So it's alphabetical, C, D, H, S, right? The lowest card by suit is the bring-in. So if you get the deuce of clubs, that means you bring it in. Now, if you were playing, let's say, in a 20-40 limit game, the bring-in might be $5, right? So you have to put in at least 5. You can come in for 20, but we don't recommend that here, especially in a game like 7 stud. When you're the bring-in, just go ahead, throw in the $5, and, so be it. The ante typically in a 20-40 game will also be in that neighborhood of, $3 to $5 depending on where you're playing. So now what happens is the next player to the left of the bring-in gets to act, raise, fold. You could call the bring-in as well. Action goes around on 1st Street. Now you come to 4th Street. And the bet here is a standard, if you're again playing 20-40, it's $20, right? The only time that changes, and this is really, really stupid, okay, it's very archaic and a dumb rule. The only time that changes is if someone pairs their door card being the face card up. So let's say a guy raised with a 5 and he catches another 5, he's got open 5s, okay? So on top of like that being a really good thing for him, right, he also gets to bet twice as much, $40. And the thinking way back when, with the older players was, well, you got to protect your hand. You got to be able to protect it, right? Where like no one's usually calling anyway when the door card pairs. So in some senses, it kind of gets the hand over with a little more quickly. The other aspect of 7-card stud that is really silly and doesn't make a lot of sense is if I'm in the 1 seat and you're in the 8 seat and my board reads King 5 and your board reads King 5, because I'm in the 1 seat, I always go first. So a lot of stud pros back in the day would fight over the 8 seat, right? Because no matter what, if they're in the 8 seat, anytime that happens, they have a positional advantage. So there was a lot of nits, which in today's poker world, my goodness, these people would exploit the crap out of it because nitdom has gone to a new level with the newer generation. Not personal, guys, but it's just true. Like looking for small little edges that is completely legal is something that's much more prevalent today than we saw even in the old days. Okay, getting off track. So once we get to 5th Street, the bet doubles. So now the bet is going to be $40. The raise is $40. Same thing with 6th Street. That card comes up as well. Now we have the river. The river card comes face down. Okay. the action is always going to be throughout the entire hand on whoever has the highest board. So if one player has an ace high board versus a king high board, ace is going to bet throughout the hand. If the other player takes the lead and say makes a pair open, well, he's going to be first to act. Okay? Once the river card comes, there's a bet, a call, a showdown. Best 5 cards wins the hand. So you take 2 cards, throw them out. They're no good. And then it just plays regular poker. Roll flush, best hand, all the way down. Okay, so now that you guys have a basic understanding of the rules of 7-card stud, let's talk about some strategies, some things to know, especially in terms of how it relates to no limit hold'em. Okay, in no limit hold'em, you get pocket aces against pocket kings, you're loving it. You're, a big favorite. Those hands are not as valuable in 7-card stud. A high pair versus a low pair is much closer. Let's take a look at this graphic right here. As you can see, in regular hold'em, aces against kings, 81.95% if you're all in before the flop, right? Now take a look at ace, ace-6 versus king, king-6 in stud. And look at the difference. Only 66% of the time will the ace, ace-6 win, right? Pretty big, drastic difference there, which, and especially because the game is limit, it allows for you to chase a lot more often, okay? Another thing to consider, too, is how much closer it becomes when the lower pair has an overcard. So, for example, if you're looking at king, king, 5, which is ahead, against queen, queen, ace, notice the numbers now when you look at the graphic. Now we're at 58% to 42%. So it's much, much closer. And because in limit poker, you're always going to be getting a really good price, it allows for you to, chase down the hands usually of the river. So why is it then that aces are so much better in hold'em than kings? Because here's why. When you make 2 pair with aces in hold'em, the pair comes on the board, right? So it's like, a pair of 4, so you got aces and 4s. Well, the guy with kings, if he makes kings and 4s, you make kings and 4s. You both make 2 pair together. In stud, he could make 2 pair where you don't. So he can improve to kings up where you just end up with aces. That's why there's a big discrepancy. And that's why in stud, a lot of the time, you're getting the right pot odds to chase, even when you know for certain, or you're pretty sure that your opponent has a better hand, it's still correct to call to the river. Now in the river, you can decide, okay, well, I didn't improve, I'm done with the hand, I'm gonna fold, but often you're getting the right price to chase, especially if you have overcards to the suspected pair you think your opponent has. Well, the second thing you're gonna have to consider, and this is what intimidates a lot of people that play hold'em, is ooh, you gotta pay attention to the dead cards and memorize stuff, right? Well, the most important street to pay attention is right away on 3rd Street. Let's say, for example, you've got split jacks. When I say split, I mean 1 is up, 1 is hidden. Split jacks with a 6, right? It's important to now look around the board. Don't just go, wow, I got jacks, that's good. Notice, is there a jack and a 6 already out? That really devalues your hand significantly. Not to the point where I'm saying you should always hold it, but for example, if an ace, queen, or a king raises, and you've got dead jacks, this might be a spot where you think to yourself, okay, even if I think my jacks are good, probably worth folding because it's so unlikely that with your dead cards out, you're going to improve. The same holds true with flushes we're going to get, which we're going to get to. And with flushes, obviously, if you have 3 spades, it's a very strong holding in a lot of cases because you only need 2 more to make a flush. But if you see 4 spades out, it doesn't leave a lot left. Now, in terms of starting hands, a hand like 4, 5, 6 offsuit might look like, or with 2 to a suit, might look kind of sexy. You might think to yourself, oh, a 3 straight. These hands are not that good, okay? Especially if you're up against a player who's, let's say, raised with a 10. If a 10 is raised and you're sitting there with a 6 with 4 or 5 offsuit in the hole, the standard play here should be fold. Now, there's exceptions to this rule, right? If it's a multi-way pot, you might consider seeing 4th Street, especially if you don't see any 3s or 7s, right? Because now, again, you have to pay attention to the board. If you have 4, 5, 6 and there's a 7, 7, 3 out, you don't want to play because your chances of hitting that straight are very, very slim. And if you do play this hand, you want to play basically like fit or fold, like where you really want to improve on 4th Street, and if you don't, although the bet is rather small in terms of in relation to the pot size, let's say you catch a deuce and the 10 catches a queen, you don't want to continue with 4, 5, oh, no, I said 4, 5, 6. Let's say it's 6, 7, 8 and you catch a deuce, because 4, 5, 6 and you got a deuce, you got a gut shot. Let's say it's 6, 7, 8 and you catch the deuce and you're up against a player with 10 queen. Now would be a good time to fold. But again, pretty much avoid playing these kind of hands if at all possible, because they're just going to get you into a lot of trouble. Now, we talked a little bit about 3 flushes, and a 3 flush essentially means you start with 3 of the same suit. And these can be powerful hands, but they're very dependent upon the board and which 3 cards they are, right? Ace, king, queen, all the same suit, pretty strong hand, right? Especially if you're up against the guy with a 10. You've got 3 overcards to his 10, and you've got 3 suiteds, and you've got 3 straights. Beautiful hand. Now, if you have deuce 3 9 all of hearts and a queen raises, and there's 2 hearts out, or let's say there's 3 hearts out, you've got garbage, right? So you have to be really paying attention to what's out. And as a general rule, if there are more than 2 of your suit out, do not chase this flush. Don't chase it based on solely the the fact that you're going to hit the flush. If you happen to have a hand like 10 jack queen of hearts and a 7 raises, and there's 3 hearts out, you can still play this hand aggressively because you have added value with the 3 card straight and the 3 overcards to the 7. Very, very important to not just play these 3 flushes naked, if you will, with no real chance to win the hand outside of you making that flush. Now, if you do have a naked flush like deuce 3 9 of hearts and there's no hearts out in an 8-handed game, that helps your chances of actually hitting it, so it's probably worth calling to 4th Street. And even if you miss, unless there's a bet and a raise, you should probably see 5th Street as well. Because, again, the price is so good that you're getting in stud. It's limit poker. Nobody can go all in on you. So the other big discrepancy between Hold'em and stud is ace-king, right? In Hold'em, we get ace-king, and we're like, yeah, look at me, I got ace-king. I love doing this. It's so fun these days. I just added that in. That wasn't in the script. I added that part, right? Ace-king, anyway, ace-king in Hold'em is a powerful hand, right? We look to play that aggressively with some 3 bets and whatnot. In stud, ace-king 4, is just not very good. Unless, of course, you have the 3 flush, and then it becomes a relatively powerful hand. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't play the hand, because there are situations in stud, a lot of situations that come up where you should steal, especially if you have a high card showing. So let's say you have a king up with the ace 4 in the hole, right? You don't have anything good. I mean, it might look pretty, but it's really not that good. If there's no cards higher than a king behind you, you should still probably raise this hand and try to steal the antes. Because when you steal the antes in stud, it's very different than the price you're being laid in other games. So, imagine 400, 800 limits, right? The ante would be $100, and the bring-in is 100. So there's 900 bucks out there, right? To steal that 900, it costs 4. So you're getting over 2 to 1 to steal on 3rd Street. Now, if you raise with this king, ace 4, and somebody re-raises you with a queen or a jack, you don't have to continue with the hand all the way. You can go, okay, you caught me, I was stealing, and you can move on to the next one. Again, that's not always the way you're going to play it. Getting some kooky, crazy, back and forth, I'm representing kind of thing. But as a general rule, you should be stealing when you're the high card, but don't overvalue ace-king. Don't play this hand. Don't be calling raises with ace-king 4, just hoping to try to catch an ace or a king. It's a bad hand. So I talked a little bit about 3-card flushes, right, and why they're valuable. Well, let's take a look at what happens when you have that 3-card flush and it turns into a 4 flush on 4th Street, okay? This flush draw will get there over 50% of the time. So let's take a look at the graphic right here. So here you see you have deuce 3 7 queen, all hearts versus king king 6 7. Okay, so the pair of kings has the flush draw absolutely crushed, right? You'd think it's got a pair, there's no way it can win. However, the flush draw is 54% to win this hand on 4th Street. So what that tells you is you should be playing pretty aggressively with flush draws on 4th Street. The more the merrier. If you've got 3-4-way action, you want to keep them in. So sometimes you want to think about maybe calling a bet to suck them in. So for example, if the king bets out and you pick up the flush draw and there's 2 guys behind you, you might not want to raise there because you might knock them out. And keeping them in is good for you. 9-10 was already out there. Even better odds on your hand because the more the merrier, as I said. Now, if it goes bet, call, call in front of you and you got the flush draw, spruce it up, right? Worst case scenario, the guy with the better hand, the big pair right now, re-raises you, gets the other 2 out, you play it heads up. That's not terrible, you're still a favorite. Best case scenario, he re-raises, they both call, you can re-raise, jam it up, right? Because now you're in a really good situation. So this is why I value 3-card flushes so much more than 3-card straights. Because with 3-card straights, you don't get as many good situations because you need to hit a lot more specific cards. So for example, if you have 4, 5, 6, you need to catch specifically a 3 or an 8 right away. Or it's hard to continue.
Oh, why did I check
3 hearts you can pair. You can catch, any one of the 9 hearts remaining. Or no, pardon me, not 9, 10 hearts. So it's better. See, I'm doing the math as we go. We're not editing this stuff. We're just going. We're teaching stud, and I'm learning stud as I'm teaching it. Okay, so hopefully this gives you guys a little bit of insight into some of the things to think about when you're playing stud. I highly encourage that.
I was hoping you'd bet there. That's why I checked.
One other thing I wanted to cover is the river. Okay, now this isn't the time to try to be like this hero. like genius next level laydowns. I mean, once you get really good at stud, maybe there'll be situations where you just can like know for sure that you know the guy has it and fold. But the problem with stud in terms of folding the river is, let's say you're in a heads up pot that goes raised on 3rd Street, bet, 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 1 bet each to the river. You're getting like 8-1 on the call. It's not no limit. You're getting 8-1 odds. So you really only have to win this pot 1 out of 8 times. He has to be bluffing. If you have anything that can beat his board, you know, like a pair of anything, or sometimes even just ace high, it's probably worth it to call unless you have other information, right? As you get better at the game, of course, you can start to figure out, okay, this guy would never do this and this and this. But overall, as a general rule, especially for you beginners out there, don't be a hero trying to fold rivers, okay? So, hope to see you guys at a stud table at the World Series of Poker. They've got satellites, you got $1,500 buy-in, you got the 10K stud, which is a prestigious event. A lot of the East Coasters come out for that because stud is very popular over in Foxwood, Atlantic City, and still also, you know, at the Commerce Casino in Los Angeles. So I really highly recommend that you expand your mind a little bit. You know, if you've been playing Hold'em for a long time, give it a shot.
Damn.
You may find that you have a knack for it. You may find you enjoy it. It's a little more laid back. You don't have your entire bankroll at stake every single game. So, hope you guys enjoyed this poker tip, and we're going to do some more of these. So, next week we are going to cover, what should we cover? Let's cover Pot Limit Omaha, right? Because you guys play that, but whatever. We're going
to... I think next we got here is 7-card stud high-low, so I got to do that.
Super duper excited about this one. How to play stud 8. Why? Because stud 8 is my favorite game. I love it. I used to play a format of this in house games back in Toronto where we would like do pitches and buys and roll your own and declare and all this kind of stuff. And it taught me more about poker and how to think about the game than any other game I can imagine. Obviously, it's not as, you know, sexy and cool as something like No Limit Hold'em, but there's complexities that combine mathematical understanding of who's ahead and also reading ability, because hand reading is super important in this game. The more apt you are at defining a player's range of hands, and then you couple that with the mathematical understanding and knowledge of like, well, how do I do against that range? That's where you squeeze out, you know, small value in certain situations where, you know, you're definitely going to call, but you go, oh, you know what? I know that I'm 53% here. I'm going to raise. And when you're playing against the best in the biggest games in the world, 3%, that's plenty. Like, that's like what you're looking for. That's a lot of gravy. You have to push those small edges. It's not like playing with blind people. You know, every time you have an edge and you miss a raise in a spot like that, it's going to cost you equity. So before we get into all that stuff about the fun stuff, and we're going to get into some fun stuff in this one, lots of numbers being thrown at you. Okay, so let's talk about the rules and the format and how this all works. If you watched How to Play Stud, you should have an understanding now of how the, you know, hands get dealt out. Two cards down, one face up. Then you have another one face up all the way to the river that comes down. The bet doubles on 5th Street. In Stud High-Low, yes, the low card still brings it in, even though low cards are good in this game. If, you know, the Deuce of Clubs, which is the lowest card by suit, would always be the bring in. If that's not out there, it's the lowest card that's all automatically has to put in a bring in. And I said in stud in the video that if you're the low card, you should always just bring it in for the minimum. There are some cases in stud 8 where you could come in for the max, but I don't advise it. I still think you're better off, unless it's really bizarre tournament situation where you're like all in for one bet, you know, maybe it's worth to just put it in. But otherwise, you just want to bring it in for the minimum. So it's high-low now, right? So we talked about this in the Omaha high-low video and how that works. Half the pot's going to go to the high, and half the pot is going to go to a low if it qualifies, okay? If nobody actually makes a low, it's just the high game. So to make a low, you have to have 5 cards, 8 or better. Now, they can't repeat. So ace, ace, deuce, deuce, 3 is not a 3 low. You have to have 5 different cards. So the best low is ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, which also makes for a straight, which is a powerful hand that is often going to scoop you the whole pot. So the question is, what's a good hand in this game, all right? Well, let's start with the top starting hands, like the top low hands, right? Top low hands would look like ace, deuce, 3, 3, 4, 5. You know, if you had 3, 4, 7 suited, like any 3, what we call babies. Babies are 8 and under, well, that are suited. It's a pretty strong hand. If you have a suited ace with it, like, you know, ace, 3, 5 of spades or ace, 4, 5 of spades, those are very, very powerful, 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 powerful starting hands for both the high and the low, right? In this game, you don't necessarily want to commit to just half the pot. That's why we'll talk about high pairs later and how for some of you beginners, you might be better off avoiding those. And some trashy low hands that just don't connect, and we'll get to that as well. But for now, we're going to talk about the powerful starting hands. That's a very, very powerful, essentially two-way starting hand that encompasses low and high. Now, there are some strong high hands, of course, that only go one way. Obviously, if you have rolled up hand, rolled up fives, like if you're dealt fives in the hole and a 5-up, it's about as strong as you're going to see. And also if you get aces, especially aces with a low card, right? Because now you have a two-way hand. If you have ace, ace 3 versus ace, ace 9, the ace, ace 3 is actually a lot better because you could backdoor a low. Just because you don't have a 3-card low, doesn't mean you can't make one. And as a general rule, as I said, if you're going for low, you don't want to play like ace, deuce, 10, ace, deuce, 9. You want 3 low cards. You don't want to play 3, 4, queen. You want, just to chase. You want to start with 3, hope you catch a low card on 4. Now you have a powerful hand because you got 3 shots at catching your low. And also, maybe, making some pairs, making some straights, making some flushes to get you the whole pot. Now there's some other, what I'd call situational high hands that you can play. That would include hands like, kings, queens, especially if there's not an ace out. If you have an ace raising and you've got split kings or split queens, a lot of the time, especially in if you're at an 8-handed table, you should just fold these hands, right? Because what are you really hoping for? If you've got king, king, jack, and an ace raises, he's either saying, I've got 3 low cards, right? Or he's saying, I've got aces. Now, against that range of hands, the kings just don't do that well. So, for the most part, anytime a card higher than yours raises and you're just going high, the worst types of hands to play in stud 8 or better are the second best high hands, right? So if a king raises, and in stud 8 especially, and you have queens with a queen up, that's a fold. I know in stud high you wouldn't, because in stud high, a king is going to raise a lot more than in stud high low. In stud high low, what kind of king is going to raise? Pretty much just kings. They don't steal as much because in stud 8 or better, just because there's a deuce and a 3 behind you, which in stud high would be like bad cards, they're not bad cards in stud high low. So, I have a king. That's not a steal card. A steal card in, stud 8 or better is an ace because it goes both ways. It's a very, very powerful one. Or even a low card. Having like a 5-up is stronger than having a king up. So steals you may see may come from, for example, let's say I'm, in middle position and I've got a 5-up and I just have like ace king in the hole or ace queen. And there's a queen and a king behind me and a 3 bringing. Now I raise here. It's kind of a steal. Like I have somewhat of a two-way hand. I've got a little bit of high. I don't really have anything. I know that the queen or the king, they're not going to play unless they got a pair. So they're kind of like dead cards. The one I'm worried about would be the low card, the bring-in. Because if he has 3 to low, he's going to continue. And if he catches a low card on 4, that could pose a problem for me. So now let's take a look at some other like non-automatic situational low type hands you might play. A hand like, split 4s and a 5. You have split 7s with an ace, or even a hand like, ace, queen, 5 of spades, which gives you, a good flush draw type hand, and you've got, some high pair potential. Now, these hands are not as strong as the top tier hands because by 5th Street, you could have a really, really bad hand. Like, you start with 4, 4, 5, and you catch a queen on 4th Street. You're it's not good. Now, having said that, if you can get these hands heads up, let's say, for example, split 7s with an ace. Let's say a 5 raised, right? And you have a 7-up with a 7 ace. You can 3-bet here because hand plays pretty well heads up against the 3-card low. And you've also got a backdoor low draw yourself. You've got an ace and a 7. And, of course, like I said, you got the high pair. That's a hand that, in that situation, you might want to play. However, that same hand, like split 7s with an ace, let's say a king raises, okay, and a deuce calls. Now, all of a sudden, you have an iffier spot. Maybe that's not as good of an example with the 7, 7, ace, but let's say you have split 4s with a 5 more specifically, right? King raises, deuce calls, and you got split 4s with a 5. You don't want to play these second best hands, okay? You know that this guy's got kings. Almost 100% of the time, he's going to have the kings. Very few times he's going to have 2 baby hearts or some sort of, pocket pair or whatnot. But the low guy, he's probably got 3 lows, so you're behind in the low, you're behind in the high. You need a miracle 4th Street just to get back in the race. Get out. Hand. You try to make 2 pair. The kings can make 2 pair, beat you.
Get out,
you catch a low card. The other guy catches a high. Just get out, right? Those are the most dangerous hands. So these situational low type hands are the ones that separate, the great elite players from the mediocre or weak ones because they're tougher to play, right? So it takes a lot more hand reading skill. I play them probably a little bit more than I should because I feel like I have a good read on where my opponents are at when they've paired and things like that. But as a general rule, you don't want to be chasing second best highs and second best lows. Well, now let's take a look at some hands that, if you're playing stud high, you'd consider, but for stud 8, we're going to call these trash hands. Now, trash hands look like, 3-card straights, 9, 10, jack. If you got, 9s with a 4, ace, queen, jack, 2 5s with a king, or, the last grouping I would call, there's like 3 flushes that have 2 high features and 1 low. Before I mentioned in the, situational ones, you have like, ace, 4, jack of hearts. That's not bad because you have 2 low features, 1 high. You have the ace, which is very, very powerful in this game, as I said. The ones that are trouble is like king, jack, 4, as I said, because you're only playing for the flush. And a lot of times you'll end up drawing to half of a pot because the other guy's already got half locked up, and you might not even have a pair. So just imagine, for example, you're up against the low draw, and by 5th street, he makes, he's got 4, 5, 6 showing, and you started with king, jack, 4 of spades, and you got the 7 of spades, and then you got like a queen. So you have king high on 5th street.
Damn it.
Flush draw. This guy might have a low already, right? And you have nothing. So he might have you scooped both ways. And you're going to call 5th street, 6th street, and probably have to pay off 7th street, the big bet streets, hoping to chase to just get your money back, right? Not ideal. So try to avoid the hands that have 2 high features, 1 low, unless that high feature, of course, is the ace, because that's a 2-way hand and it's considered a low feature. Now, the reason you don't play like, 9s, 9, 9, 4 is obviously because there's a lot of overcards, and anyone who has a higher pair than that's starting with a 10 jack queen king that's raising or an ace, puts you in a bad spot. And again, you're hoping that these 9s hold. A lot of times, what happens with just 9s is, let's say you are up against 2 guys with lows, right? So one guy has deuce 3, one guy has 4, 6. One guy catches a queen, the other one catches a 10. Nothing. They don't pair, nothing. You got 9s. You're still in there with the 9s. Well, they miss their low, but they end up making queens or 10s or 9s. That's why kings are much better than 9s. It's not the only reason, obviously. But if you're up against low draws, it matters to have an even higher pair because there's a lot of backdoor, stupid, goofy hands they can make. Well, the next group of hands we're going to talk about are trashy low hands. So a trashy low hand, what's that? Like a deuce 6-8, 3-7-8. Now, you're drawing to a rough low, like the 8. It's not powerful. The best you're really trying to hope to make is an 8. You don't have a 3-card straight draw. If you don't have like 3 suit, if there's another low card out there, if they're playing, they probably have a better 3-card hand than you do. So you're already starting out of the gate behind, and you generally don't want to.
I don't even understand half the time about that.
The other really important factor that can turn what looks like a good hand into junk is dead cards. Okay, you need to really pay attention to what's out on the board. So, for example, say you start with 3, 4, 6.
Yeah, you gotta watch everybody else's hand and make sure that you don't have like a king in your hole that you're trying to hit, and there are 2 kings out there, so that somebody else folded because they had shit hand. Damn, I don't know why I'm swearing so much, guys. I'm sorry about that. I don't usually like that much, but I am swearing a lot, and I apologize. Apologize a lot for that. Not like to do that though, that much. The reason I like to play in these tournaments is because they're a lot more balanced, but it's kind of tourney's the one, the great tape, I don't know. Is this the same? How many chips do you start with though? In this one, I thought it was 5,000. That's 5,000. Okay, yeah, it's a little better. Sure. We're going to the reggae festival this weekend, Jambridge, and that's what it's called. We live in Cambridge.